Okay, give it a second to load. Okay, so middle school reopening campus and reorientation. I appreciate all the feedback that you've already provided. I've read through it all. It has come in through our communications office, and then also I sent a Google form out and just read through just one more time that information before I had dinner this evening. So anything that you've put into that form after dinner time, I might not have read, but up until dinner time today, which was about 5:45 for me, I have read that and I appreciate it. There were some specific things in there related to specific people, but I tried to address all of the general inquiries as best that I can in this presentation. One thing I wanted to say before we go through the slides is that, you know, I was walking through campus the other day and we're starting to see more signage pop up about moving through campus and kind of the new ways of doing things, which is fantastic. And one of the signs really struck me, and I keep seeing it around campus. Sarah, can you still see my screen?
I can now, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. And the sign said, be safe, be kind. And that's what I want to start with tonight. And I want that to be what leads us through all of this, being safe and being kind. And that's really important because we are a community of people. We can do hard things. This is hard and we need all of us in it together, and we need to make that commitment together. We have a lot of different people, students, parents, faculty that have a lot of different circumstances at play. And for us to do this and do it well, we need to be safe and be kind. And we have to commit to one another to make sure that we're able to do that well. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the details for middle school reopening. I think you've heard about the high flex classroom approach. We have outfitted our classrooms with two-way audio-visual equipment for easy and quality connections. So here's a picture of the summer session with strings with one of the AV setups in action. So you see the students in the classroom wearing their masks, and then the students connecting from home. Also, the teacher has access to then the smartboard and the teacher laptop. So the AV equipment is really just for the students to connect from home, and it won't get in the way if a teacher still wanted to play a video or do something on their laptop. This is a completely separate piece of equipment. You'll see the tablet below on the cart, and that's where the teacher can control the Zoom functions to help students connect better from home. So students learning on campus and students learning from home have a shared experience, which was really important for the way we were thinking about this. Here is our daily and now weekly schedule. We're really excited that our schedule is now a weekly schedule because students in different sections of the same class will be doing the same things week by week. Last year, you might remember we had a 6-day rotation. This year, we're moving to a 4-day rotation, and we're going to have this 5th day flex day on the 5-day weeks. And that's where the dives will take place. These will happen mostly on Wednesdays, but during ski season, for instance, if we still go skiing, which that decision will be made, haven't even thought about that yet. I'm holding on hope, but we will see. But that decision will be made later in the fall. The 5th day flex day will be ski Fridays if we go skiing, but otherwise they're mostly Wednesdays. They will be on the calendar. You will know when they are. They'll be accessible on Veracross. And those will be optional for students learning on campus. So that's a really important piece that we are just working through recently. So I want to make sure I make extra note of that. If your child is committing to be on campus for the letter days, we would understand if they choose to stay home on these flex days, because the flex days is where we're planning all of the things that happen across grade levels: clubs, groups, programs, dive classes, even some grade level activities that are larger. We don't have a lot of large spaces on campus to bring that big group together. So those things will happen virtually on flex days. Flex days will run virtually, remotely. Students are still welcome to come to campus, but they'll be connecting remote on site on those flex days. So we want to provide families with a little bit more optionality with that day in particular, or those days in particular, because we know that there is a lot of remote connecting happening on those days for everyone. That's a good day for connections with peers and faculty too. So there will be some student life things that happen across grade levels on those days. The only other change to our timetable for next year is at the end of the day, we used to have dive rotations. We've always had supervised study at the end of the day, and we've always had checkout. We used to have some dive classes and some advisory lessons. This year, on those letter days, we are just going to have supervised study and checkout. So morning meeting, the flex time in morning meeting will be in advisory groups. Lunch will be with advisory groups. Supervised study and checkout at the end of each day will also be with advisory groups. Students may get started on their homework, organize their materials, and they will take turns at their locker during that period of time. And then we are going to walk all of the students to the dining room area for a really organized pickup. And the day is going to be a little shorter, ending around 3:15. So what will run virtually? Any gathering larger than our spaces allow, so a full middle school morning meeting will be a virtual morning meeting. Students might still connect remotely in their advisory spaces on campus, but we can't bring everyone together in the same space, at least for this period of time. Any group with students in multiple grade levels will connect virtually. We're really working to maintain that grade level cohort of students. So students are only in physical spaces and interacting physically with students in a space in their grade level. And I'll talk more about that in a few slides. So this means we have virtual connections for dives, grade level and middle school level morning meetings, clubs, groups, programs, large events, and celebrations. So we're still working to put all of those things forward. We just have to do it in a way that's safe. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about grade level cohorts and instructional groups. Grade level cohorts are the group of students at Wellington that will be interacting in the same space over time. That's the boundary of the interactions. In the middle school, we're looking at the grade levels as the cohort groups. So the grade levels vary in size in the middle school. We have then between 35 and 55 students in each grade level. So the 5th grade is a cohort. The 5th grade is right around 35 students this year. Now within the grade level cohort, we will have smaller instructional groups, and those are the classes. And we have those right now, they will be approximately 12 to 16 students. And so an example of that would be the one 5th grade science class is an instructional group. The 5th grade students from that science class, if they have it first period, then go on to their 2nd period class. They might not all go to the same 2nd period class. They might mix it up and then be in a different instructional group. So the cohort, what they will not do is go into a class with anyone outside of their grade level, because their grade level is the cohort. So anytime they're in a class with somebody outside of their grade level, like a dive, for instance, some of them have students grades 5 through 8 in them. Those classes will happen virtually. And the dive classes in particular will happen on those 5th day flex Wednesdays. So middle school students will be changing classes and mixing among instructional groups within their grade level cohorts. Study spaces. Small rotating groups of students from each instructional group will go to the study spaces when the instructional group is larger than any space allows. So if we have an instructional group of, let's say 14 students, and we have a space that allows for 12 students, 2 of those students then would rotate into our study space and connect remote on site, which means they would rotate through the class and they would be in that study space not very often. Once we have more numbers about who's going to be on campus, who's going to be learning from home, and we're also looking at different types of furniture for spaces, which will allow more students to be in a space, I will have a better sense of how often students will be in study spaces connecting remote on site. I know it's on your minds. I've seen the questions. I just don't have that yet. What I can say at this point is that students should be in their classes, in the classrooms, if they're on campus, more often than they would be if they're connecting remote on site in study spaces. It might be also that they walk into a class period one day and typically 2 students go down to connect remote on site, but because of absences that day, they all fit into the classroom. So it's not a static number. It's going to be a really fluid number that could change by the day. But I should have a better sense of generally what we're looking at soon. So moving through campus, I'd like to talk a little bit about our new ways of moving through campus. We need to honor the 6 feet of space between individuals. So we are going to talk with students a lot about that. I've ordered, I think, about 100 6-foot pool noodles, bright red pool noodles, to use as a visual so that students understand what we mean by 6 feet of space. Each classroom will have one, we'll have them on the wall. There will be a lot of visuals to help them understand that spacing. Class changes will happen by grade level. So we'll release 8th graders to go to their next class first, then 7th grade, then 6th grade, then 5th grade is the plan at this point in time. So class changes will take a little bit longer, but what we realize is that it won't take too long because students will not be stopping at their lockers any longer in between classes, nor will they be using that time to use the bathroom or get a drink of water. All of those things have to happen at other times and in other ways. So they really are, and they're carrying all of the things with them. So they really are just walking from one space to another. And we think we can probably time it so that the grade levels are mostly in the hallways with their cohorts by the time they get to their next space, their next class. We have two-way traffic in the middle school. We're going to put arrows on the hallway floor, and students will walk on the arrows to keep that 6 feet of space in between students. There is one area of the middle school, and you might be familiar with it. It's right outside of my office, where it's a little bit narrow and tends to get a little bit crowded. Remember, students aren't stopping at their lockers during the day this year. They will only stop at them in the morning and in the afternoon, and I'll talk about how we'll do that. So that will help. What we're going to do is set up a one-way area in that spot. So if you think about when you're driving in a construction zone, or sometimes in Ohio, you discover these like wonderful covered bridges that are one way, you have to stop on one side. And if it's only wide enough for one car, you wait until the other car comes through and then you take your turn and go the other way. And you just have to take turns doing that. That's how that hallway is going to be set up. We have a question out to Franklin County Public Health about the hallways and the directionality of them. We could go to a model where we have one-way hallways in the middle school. That's something that we're considering and we have considered. We really want their input on that at this point in time. If we do that, there is a likelihood that students are then walking in places around the middle school that they would not have to walk. So it's kind of like a bigger mixing of students in different grade levels and different spaces, versus just going to a place that could be 1 or 2 doors down from where you're leaving. So we have a question out to them. Would it be better for students to walk kind of farther and around campus more to get to the next spot? Or would it be better to have just 6 feet in between them in a two-way hallway? So we're waiting to hear back from them, and we will let them guide that. Either way, we have a pretty good plan operationally about how it will unfold. Students will be sanitizing their hands frequently throughout the day, including before breaks and after breaks. So anytime they go outside, they will sanitize, and then coming back in, same thing. We have sanitizing, hand sanitizer through the hallways in every classroom, in any spot we can put it, really. Lockers, let's talk about lockers. There have been a lot of questions about lockers. So as children come in the morning, we have that flex time, as you know, from 8 to 8:25. We typically don't have all students arriving at once. So that's really helpful in these new COVID times. And as they come in, they can take a look at their locker, and if they have 6 feet of space on either side, they can use that opportunity to go straight to their locker, put anything in their locker they need to put in for the day. In the winter, it might be their coat and their hat and all of those things. It might be some things from their backpack that they had for homework that they know they don't need that day. Whatever it is, they can stop at their locker, and then they go into their advisory room, and they have advisory in the morning during flex time and then during morning meeting. So they'll be checking into morning meeting. Either the morning meeting will be held in advisory groups with just the people in the room, which we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays typically, or if it's a Monday and Friday where we have the big middle school morning meeting, or if it's a Wednesday where we have the grade level morning meetings, they'll be connecting remote on site within their advisory space with their advisory group. Locker stops will also go down to the bottom bullet point here. They'll also happen at the end of the day. I already mentioned that end of the day supervised study. We have a block of time there for taking turns at lockers, checking out, getting everything ready to take home. In the meantime, students can start working on homework. They're in their advisory space, waiting for their turn at their locker, but then also have some time to to kind of just maybe even organize their things for the end of the day and figure out what it is they need to take home. If they forget something during the day, we'll ask students to ask permission from a teacher during class time to go to their locker. Students are not to be at their lockers in between classes. There's just too much movement in the hallway at that point in between classes, and we really need that space in between students to keep that 6 feet of space. Middle school mask breaks and mask etiquette. This is an important piece, and it's something that we've received a lot of questions about, and there will be more details in our next version. So I will give you a few things tonight, but please know when version 3 comes out of our reopening plan, there will be more details school-wide about mask breaks and mask etiquette, because this is a school-wide issue, not just a middle school issue. But the mask breaks, right now, we know that the outdoor breaks and recess, morning break and recess break are really good times for a mask break as well. We're just going to ask that when students are playing in recess, and they could be in a space with other students, that they wear their mask. But if they want to go off and have a seat in the grass with 6 feet around them and just relax and take their mask off, that's a really good time for a mask break. They can also have a snack or have some water out of their water bottle at that time. Obviously, during lunch, they will also have a mask break. We're identifying spaces for students to eat lunch around campus where they have plenty of space. And then anytime we can have lunch outside, we're going to be having lunch outside. But Ohio weather, we know, doesn't allow that every day. So we will have a variety of indoor spaces available for students. The board gym, we have half of that, the BPAC. We're looking at some of the JAG Commons possibly as a lunch space. But we will have those identified, and students will eat with their grade level. Again, that grade level cohort will eat their lunch. The mask will be off. We're looking at possibly another mask break at the end of the day during that supervised study checkout period. Kind of depends on how that plays out. We'll see. It could be a great time for students to also get a mask break in if time allows. I think at the beginning of the school year, it's mostly going to be just getting used to that new routine and then the new pickup routine, but I'm sure we'll become more efficient with it over time, and then maybe there's time for a mask break as well. They're also so close to on their way out the door that hopefully that they can, they know that that's coming and that we can work efficiently to have an organized dismissal. Mask breaks might also be planned by individual teachers and grade levels. So each grade level is a little bit different, and that's something that we might incorporate into the day. But these are ones that I know we can do kind of across the middle school. Snacking during the day is going to be a little bit different too, pretty much because snacking is a mask break. So morning break, and then of course lunch they'll be eating, but morning break will be the time where students can snack. We've been pretty open about students snacking kind of throughout the day, and I'm fully supportive of that. I understand snacks are a big deal. We will still be able to do that, but we have to do it during a time that keeps everyone safe. Okay, let's talk supplies. We are compiling individual supplies packages for students. So anytime that kids do not need to share supplies, we are going to purchase those supplies so they can use their own. Like, there's no reason really for children to share pencils this year. We can buy pencils so that everyone has their own set of pencils and they don't have to hand off pencils to one another. There might be some equipment like PE equipment, science equipment, some things in the art studio that we would not buy for each student, that they have to share in some way. In those cases, we will disinfect and sanitize the equipment before it is shared. But otherwise, they'll have their own individual supplies packages. We've ordered binders and notebooks and pencils and pens and rulers and scissors. That's something that they typically share, but this year they'll have their own set of scissors at school, glue sticks and glue bottles and all sorts of things. They'll have their own supplies packages. They don't have to carry everything around with them. Like, I can't imagine that we'd want students to carry around a bunch of glue in their backpack, particularly if they're not using it that day. So some of those things they can keep in their locker, and then they can take turns going to get them, or they can, the teacher can remind them to bring them on specific days. Otherwise, the things they need for the day need to be in their backpack. Please check the parent supply list posted on the middle school page in Veracross. There are a few updates on it, given our new parameters. So I apologize for the late, addition of information, but there are just some things that have come up due to all of this that we think would be helpful for students to have. One of those things is noise canceling earbuds and headphones. I'm sorry, earbuds or headphones. They only need one, But if you look for the noise canceling ones, it's really helpful in drowning out background sound for the student and then anyone they might be talking to on technology. And those would be, I think, important whether they're on campus or at home. It really does help them focus. And those are particularly important this year. A backpack for carrying the supplies and materials through the day, mask and a backup mask. We have disposable surgical masks on campus, so no one will ever go without one. We have 30,000 children's masks and 30,000 adult masks, so we have plenty of backups. At the same time, we know that children probably like to wear the particular kind that they have. As long as it meets our mask standards that will come out in version 3, we're fine with that. A water bottle, something they can refill throughout the day. We will have water bottle filling stations available. We will not have water fountains in use this year. We don't want people's mouths close to the spout on the water fountain. Personal hand sanitizer. We have personal hand sanitizer for all students in their supplies package, and we have it all around the school. But if they want to bring a backup one or have one of their own, that might be something to think about. And this year, we will not be changing for physical education class for this period of time until I don't know when. So they might want to have some deodorant or antiperspirant on hand. We all might want them to have that on hand. That is totally a personal choice. We will not be, we have to figure out kind of the appropriate place to do that. It would have to be a bathroom break, but that's something that they might want to think about and have around for after PE class in particular. Optional, and something that I'm going to look into because somebody asked about this earlier today, but I was thinking of a little beach towel or even a little hand towel to sit on during mass breaks if we go outside and they want to sit in the grass and sit on that, or in the board gym, just to have something where they're not sitting on the ground that might be more comfortable. Somebody asked about, cleaning those, and is that a problem with, sharing or transmission, sharing germs? And I don't know that it is any more so than someone's backpack, because what we would not want students to share those. They would only use their own, and then it would go back in their backpack, and then they would use it again. So you could talk with your child, or you can talk with your family about how frequently you would want to wash that towel. So more to come on that, but I thought that might be a good idea if we find it to be a safe thing to do. So let's talk about computers and technology a little bit. We have the tech requirements on the supply sheet on the middle school page in Veracross. As always, we provide Chromebooks to 5th and 6th grade students, and 7th and 8th grade students bring their own laptop. And there are more specifics on that sheet if you're wondering if your computer is up to par. Nothing has changed there. It has been the same. Veracross will still be used for parent communications, grades, weekly newsletters. And then we also have Google Classroom this year that we're going to implement a little bit more. And we're going to use that for student teaching and learning. So the Google Classroom is really going to serve as an online complement to the things that you would normally find in the classroom. So a teacher, a student works on something in class, the teacher looks it over, the teacher writes something on it, provides that feedback to the student. That's what Google Classroom is going to serve. So students will have a login for Google Classroom, but parents will not. Parents will still log into Veracross. Grades will still be recorded in Veracross. We will still use the grade book, and we will still post progress reports there. Google Classroom really is about teaching and learning. So while there might be some feedback and some grades posted in Google Classroom because there's an easy spot to put a grade on something, that might not be all of the things. There might be some other things that teachers grade that would be in Veracross. So Veracross will have all of the grades, Google Classroom grades, and anything else that's included in the class. Google Classroom might have, just like a teacher would hand a paper back to a student with a grade written on top of the paper, that's the Google Classroom grade. So the student sees it, great, there it is on the paper, the feedback's right there on the paper. Google Classroom provides a great format for that, but that doesn't necessarily record the grade in a grade book. And that's not necessarily something that parents see. We know that, right? That paper doesn't always make it home to show parents. That's what Google Classroom will be. So anytime you wanted to hop into Google Classroom, we not only allow it, but we encourage it. You would just ask your child to log in with you and have them be the driver and show you around Google Classroom and their different classes and what they're doing in each class. Veracross is still the place where you have your own login and access to the overview of grades. We are also continuing to use Zoom for online class meetings. And then this year, I'm really excited to also introduce in Google Classroom, but then also the single sign-on. So we're using Clever, and once you sign into Clever, it then signs you on to many of these different applications, so you don't have to keep signing in again and again. And we think that's going to streamline you and your child's, or your and your child's experience pretty well. Okay, let's talk, circle back to physical education. I already mentioned this a little bit, but there have been a lot of questions about it. At this time, we will not be changing for PE. Organizing the locker rooms for use during the day and in between classes is not something that we can do and maintain some of these other things we've committed to at this time. Masks will be worn indoors, including in PE. We're talking about, are there individual cardiovascular exercises that students could do where they have their mask on in PE, maybe like a sprint, they take it off, they hold it in their hand, they sprint individually, they get to the end of the sprint, they put the mask right back on, and then they go back to their spot in line or onto a next station to work on a skill that's not cardiovascular. So we're trying to balance, and we have a question into Franklin County Public Health. We're trying to balance the safety of children from a cardiovascular exercise perspective. We know that if you are exercising, you know, in a cardiovascular way, you need to be able to breathe and bring oxygen into your body. So we want to make sure that we're not putting a mask on students and having them exert themselves at a high level. At the same time, we want to make sure they're getting cardiovascular activity because we know that's healthy for them. But we know that the masks need to be worn indoors. So it's kind of a balancing act. Outdoors, similar thing. If students, similar to recess and even indoor PE, if students are interacting in a way outside where they're playing a game and they're in close proximity of one another, then we're going to ask them to wear the mask, or they could get into close proximity with one another. Then we'll ask them to wear a mask. If there's an individual activity or they're taking a break, like a water break, that would be a good time to take their mask off. First of all, because they need to drink the water. Second of all, we'll ask them to separate themselves out, put some space in between the students, and then also get a break from the mask. But we're waiting on more information there. Our physical education department has been discussing and looking into it. So we're making headway there. We just don't have it quite nailed down. Students will sanitize their hands on the way in and way out. And what I should have included here, which I forgot, is that we will be disinfecting the equipment. We've also scheduled PE and art in a way so that students in the same grade level are in those spaces on that day, engaging in those classes. We will still disinfect the equipment from one instructional group to the other, but the instructional groups in those spaces on any given day are all in the same grade level, which is the cohort level. Dress code. Dress code is posted on the middle school page on Veracross. No changes there. It's the same for students this year, no matter if they are learning on campus or learning from home. We're going to ask that all students abide by the dress code. And then a lot of people have asked about number of students in a cohort. I addressed this, but I thought it was worth stating again. The grade level in middle school is the cohort, and we have between 35 and 55 students approximately in each grade level and in each cohort, depending on the grade level. Arrival each day. Students arrive between 8 a.m. and 8:25 p.m. or 8:25 a.m. And they go straight to their advisory to check in and say hello and take turns at their locker. Lockers are usually placed very close to their advisory space. Dismissal. Middle school students will go to their bus or to the Thomas Family Dining Room and Guard Gym for an organized and physically distanced pickup process. So we will use some walkie-talkies, and there will probably be signage for cars for families to pull up, so we can then make sure the students are walking out to meet you and get into the correct car in the correct order while waiting inside. We will also use that outdoor area when we're able to, but we also know Ohio weather doesn't always allow us to wait outside without some shelter. So this is our inclement weather plan. And then we'll use the outdoors as much as possible, but we'll keep students physically distanced during that process. So it might take a little bit longer this year, but hopefully not. Hopefully we'll get it down and we'll be pretty efficient. Unfortunately, at this time, there is not an aftercare option for middle school students. So we ask that parents have a plan in place and work with us on picking up students on time, as we have, being on campus, we are with students quite a bit during the day. So the time for us to hold meetings will be that time 3:15 on. And that's when we start more of our professional development and planning work as teachers. Many of those meetings, due to a variety of safety concerns and spaces and individuals, a lot of those meetings will need to take place either remote on site or on Zoom. So depending on where people are, maybe on Zoom to connect in. So that time is going to be really useful for us. And I know it's a little bit earlier, and I know not having aftercare is going to be something that's difficult for many, but giving the spaces we have in the school, we haven't identified a way to hold middle school aftercare in a way that keeps students in their grade level cohorts and allows for faculty to move on to their meetings and then on to their own personal needs and family needs towards the end of the day. Recess and breaks. Students will sanitize their hands on the way out and the way back in. We will be taking turns on the playground, or we're looking at a way maybe to divide the two playgrounds into two spaces, and then we could have 7th and 8th grade on the auxiliary field and 5th and 6th grade on the front playground. It's looking like lower school does not need that front playground during our break time. So I think that might be a possibility, which means we will have more students on our playgrounds in the middle school. At the very least, I know we can have students outside. We have a few different outdoor spaces. We are going to put up tents outside, so there will be shade. We can certainly take all students outside for a mask break and to sit outside and get some fresh air. Actually playing on the playground just has to be a little bit more organized, so that's where they might need to take turns playing on the playground. We are not holding indoor recess at this time. There are just some logistics at play with that make it really challenging. So we will still have a break. If we're not able to go outside, we will use the large spaces inside the building so that students can still get a break from their classes, possibly take a mask break, but we're not going to be all in the gym playing basketball. Absence reporting, whether students are learning on campus or learning from home, it's the same procedure as typical in both modes. We really need to know who we're expecting, and we really need to document who's there and who hasn't been there. It's really helpful for teachers as they work with students to make up work or to understand if a student's confused about something. If they look to then know that they missed a day, they know exactly what they need to do to catch that student up or to clarify what needs to be clarified. So it's really important that the communication stays open between parents and school, and that we understand who we're expecting, and that we're documenting absences.
So
this
Rachel,
is something that, yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt,
okay.
but I would like to get a few questions in. I don't know how many slides you have left, and we have a number that are kind of related.
Okay.
I think the first question is, are the start times aligned for middle and upper school students? So if an upper school student is driving their sibling in middle school, can they come at the same time?
That would be probably a better question for upper school, because middle school, I think, opens earlier at 8 o'clock. So it would be a matter of, is the upper school student able to come into the upper school? The middle school student, yes. I doubt we're talking that they would arrive before 8. So from the middle school perspective, yes. The middle school student is welcome anytime between 8 and 8:25.
Gotcha. Number of questions around sports and PE, and I'm trying to make them one sort of cohesive unit, but essentially, will there be sports for students learning from home? And what will they do after school before a sport practice starts or a game starts if there's no aftercare?
That's a good question, and something that I can connect with Lindsay about in athletics. I know athletics has been watching the government decisions about sports and athletics quite closely, and they've been moving through athletics already as students are coming in during the summer. Students participating in athletics during the school year is quite different, though, because then we're looking at changing clothes after school, some of that downtime. So we need to work all of that out. My assumption is that students learning from home would participate in sports in the same way that students learning on campus would. I don't think there would be any differences there, except for maybe figuring out transportation of getting them to the event if they're not, at school during the day.
Okay. Do you want to do a couple more and then hop back into your presentation, or would you prefer to?
Sure.
Okay.
That sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Will teachers be live in the classroom? So,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
And
So we
then,
have that equipment in the classroom that will show the teacher teaching live when students are on campus. Now, if we were to be in a position where everybody needed to go back home, that would be the one, but I still think that there would be live interactions with teachers, but possibly not directly from their classroom. But the plan as of now is for teachers to be teaching in the classroom with the students who are learning on campus, and then students who are learning from home connect using that equipment.
okay. And then as a follow-up to that, has there been any consideration given to rotating the teachers instead of rotating the students?
There has been consideration of that. And logistically, it would be very difficult. And that starts then leading us into that stricter cohort model where we have students in the same group all day long, and then teachers not having really their classroom materials around them. So there's an impact on education because teachers, are kind of teaching from the cart, but then there's also that social impact where they're not able to interact with more peers. And what we heard from parents across the board in our feedback groups was that for middle school students, they wanted their students to have as many different interactions throughout the day within the grade level cohort. That was the grouping that we heard resonated the best with parents as we move through our process.
I'm going to let you jump back into it and save some other questions.
Okay, sounds good. And this one's an important one, so I think that's a good plan. So parent-student expectations for learning on campus. Some of the things we're talking about, and maybe you're thinking this, I certainly know I've done a lot of thinking around this, is that some of these things that we're talking about really aren't, certainly not what we would typically see at Wellington, and maybe not behaviors or ways of moving around spaces that we would typically see from early adolescence. But we need everyone to take this seriously, and we need to uphold that safety standard. And anything that's not at that safety standard is unacceptable. But at the same time, we know that kids need time to learn things, and we know that people make mistakes. That's the middle school philosophy. It's not so much the mistake you made, it's your response to it. So we're happy to work with students to help get them on board with the protocol around campus and how we're expecting them to move around spaces, wear a mask, keep 6 feet. And if they make a mistake, we'll talk them through that and remind them of our protocol. But if they're letting us know that they're not able to uphold those protocols, then we're going to invite them to learn from home and connect from home. So we have this whole non-disciplinary track that we can move down with students, kind of an avenue with students and families to then talk with the child about, learning from home for a period of time. We'll try it again after some period of time, but we really can't have students on campus who are going to be repeatedly not upholding our safety standards. Again, there's a whole route that we've created that's non-disciplinary. It's not a suspension. It would not be documented as a suspension. They would still be able to connect to their classes and move through school. But if we're finding that they just aren't able to uphold that safety protocol and be that community member at this developmental phase, then they'll need to learn from home for some period of time in a non-disciplinary manner. A couple things about learning on campus, examples of adaptations. So one of the things that has come up a lot at Wellington is this is not that. So we all want to get back to normal. And I want to get back to normal. I understand that so many people just want to get back to how things were. Moving forward, we're not getting back to how things were. No matter what you choose for your family, whatever is right for your family, and it's your choice, that's not what we're going back to. For the kids who are coming to campus, they're not going back to that, what that was. We will get there eventually, but we're not doing that right now, not yet, because safety is paramount. Be safe, be kind. So a few things that might feel different. Demonstrations in a class. At Wellington, it's very common for a teacher to say, come on up, everyone, come around this table, and there's something happening and everyone's around a table. That won't be happening for a while. Those demonstrations in class, whether it's in art or science or something else that's hands-on, those demonstrations will happen from 6 feet away or remotely. We have invested in a whole stock of document cameras, which are basically cameras that are facing down, and you can do something underneath them and it automatically projects it onto a screen or to students at home. That's how we're going to show hands-on demonstrations, and we'll project it for students in the space and for students at home. Students won't be coming up, oops, let's take back to that slide. Students won't be coming up to the table. Oh my. Let's see, sorry. Can you see my slideshow, Dara?
It looks like you are frozen on email right now.
Okay.
There we go. Now you're back. Just have to make it bigger, your full screen.
Oh, good. Okay. I don't know what happened there. Something came in and it took over my screen. Oh no. Okay. So here's a little review of what we've been through. I only have a few more slides, I promise. Couple other things of adaptation. So teachers will circulate virtually around classrooms, not physically. So teachers walking around the room, checking on students, looking over their shoulder, pointing some things out, that's not going to be happening for a while. We have to keep that 6 feet of space, and teachers will probably be in their little area of the classroom and students will each be in their area, almost like we're on little islands. Small group, that will happen at 6 feet away or remotely. Zoom breakout rooms are a great way to for students to work collaboratively, but we're not going to have students kind of grouping up around one table over here and over here. That's going to look really different for a while. Social emotional development, that's been asked about a lot. We still have our advisory program, lead advisors, dean, well-being director, counselor, and as always, we focus on social, emotional, academic, and intellectual development. And we have many opportunities in student life while learning on campus and learning from home. We'll be thinking about both. We're still waiting on Franklin County Public Health to get back to us about singing and wind instruments, how they can be mitigated indoors, if at all possible. So that's a big question for us, and we're working with experts and officials there to see what's possible. More to come on that. Assessments are going to work in a really similar manner. One question and something we're talking about with progress reports, do we give a more general way of reporting the final grade? Is it more of a 3-step scale, 4-step scale versus just the grade? We know middle school students need the grade tracked for their own progress, but is there another way that looks at the end of the trimester or end of the year? More to come on that as well. We're discussing it. So reorientation schedule, I sent this out via email. We have parent advisory child intake conferences that are virtual, August 26th through 28th. And then we have, we will be inviting students to one day on campus between August 31st and September 3rd. We will let you know which day that is really soon. I know you're waiting to know. September 4th, no activities for students. That Friday, faculty reflect and adjust as needed based on what we learned during the reorientation period to then welcome everyone back for the first day of school on September 8th after Labor Day. And this gives you a sense of the one day on campus. We'll invite students on that day. They'll come in, check in with their advisor. They have an extended advisory time. So there's tech set up, locker set up, a variety of grade level activities that will happen during that time. And then we'll run through shortened classes for all students. And students at home can practice connecting from home, and then we'll practice the pickup by the dining room. Here's an important piece. If you and your child are electing to learn from home for the first 4 weeks of school, you are still welcome to attend on this day. It'll be by last name. We'll divide the alphabet into 4 groups. And you may still, or your child may still attend, or your child might just want to attend the advisory period of that day to pick up their technology, get it set up a locker in case they want some things in school, and then just do some advisory activities, or they may stay for the classes. It is not necessary. Nobody needs to come to campus for this day. We will make arrangements to make sure your child has what they need. But if they wanted to come for this day, even though they're electing to learn from home, they're welcome to do that to just get started. Totally up to you though. Okay, so that's my last slide. Be safe, be kind. Those are the 2 things that I'm going to continue to say this year. Other questions, Dara?
Yeah, what's the rationale for the flexible Wednesday, or for the way Wednesdays are organized?
Sure. So the rationale behind it is that we needed spaces for students to connect across grade levels. We also know that we have a lot of unique programming at Wellington that students engage in, and we needed time and space to plan those things. So grade levels do a lot of planning for students by the grade level. We have the dive classes. And for this year, the dive classes, since they're mixed grade level, that's a perfect time to have those. We also have been told that students needed more time in their dive classes, more sustained time. It's really hard to dive into some area of interest if you only have these like 40-minute blocks. It starts feeling kind of like a repetitive, superficial exploration of something. So we wanted to give students sustained time in their dives, in addition to a really strong academic schedule for a strong academic foundation. So it's balancing the two out. Unique programming, interesting things. That's where we might have speakers, connect with students virtually this year. That's where students might take field trips in future years, but maybe do those virtually this year. That's the rationale behind those days.
I'm going to combine two questions here. Can learn from home students, what are their PE requirements? And can on-campus students opt out of PE?
We have not talked about opting out of anything. We really believe in kind of that strong core foundation, particularly for middle school students. Learning from home PE might work a little bit differently. Again, until I understand the numbers of people connecting from home versus the ones on campus, I don't know exactly how we're going to work that. We have a few ideas, we just don't know which one yet we'll implement. One idea is that PE from home would happen asynchronously. Another idea is that a portion of PE would happen asynchronously for everyone, possibly on those Wednesdays or with a smaller group of students on campus on Wednesdays, because we know that cardiovascular exercise is so difficult while wearing a mask. So it's on my mind. I understand the complexity there, but we need to get a sense a little bit more of the numbers of people we're looking at before we then implement something for the first 4 weeks.
Gotcha. Can you talk about what would happen, what's the protocol if a child or a teacher or some other member of a cohort, I guess that's all you have is children, students and teachers, test positive for COVID-19?
And could you repeat the first part of that? What's the protocol for?
What's the protocol and expectations if someone tests positive?
Well, the expectation is that we have open communication and that our community communicates that to the school. So if somebody has that knowledge about their child or somebody in their household, we hope that they uphold that commitment to the community. More detailed information will come out about that in writing in version 3. That will be school-wide, community-wide. People are putting a lot of hard work into that list of principles that we're asking people to commit to keep our community safe. And again, be safe, and be kind. We are looking at a threshold that is an automatic quarantine for the cohort, which would be grade level. And then we're also going to be working in conjunction with Franklin County Public Health to see what we can learn from contact tracing. So I can tell you if there's evidence that there's community transmission within our community, we're going to go into, okay, where's the group for quarantine? But then there's also a threshold that if we have a number of cases in a particular grade level, it's quarantine no matter what. Even if contact tracing indicates it might be coming from different sources, we still think that at a number, there needs to be an automatic quarantine.
Yeah. Someone's question is, it seemed like the instructional group numbers you shared today were different and larger than the ones Dr. Terwin shared last week.
Possibly. We have slightly larger groups in the middle school, but we're also, it's going to vary a little bit. And I don't have the full numbers yet or the exact numbers yet, because we are still waiting to hear from families about who's going to be on campus learning from home. And we're still putting together some pieces of the schedule. So more to come on that. But I think that's where they're falling for the middle school at this point in time.
Gotcha. Rachel, is there some place, I don't think it's on the new parent resources page, where the schedule is shown again currently? Is it in the plan, or can you go back to that slide? Someone just wants to take a peek at that schedule again.
The letter day schedule?
Yes.
That is on the middle school page in Veracross.
There you go.
Yep, and you can download it there, and there's a PDF of it. It doesn't show the Flex Wednesday, but that was just for a visual tonight, but it has all of the information there. Okay. Timetable and everything.
All right, we are getting really close to our ending, so I'm trying to find a good one that's been asked several Here's a unique question. How crowded will I'm thinking she's saying the test day, the one day on campus be? Can those be scheduled as one-to-one meetings if a student is learning from home from the beginning of the school year?
So 25% of students will be on campus on any day. So we're running 4 days, and we're going to split the alphabet 4 ways and invite students in that way. So I guess it'll fluctuate a little bit because we might have more students with last names that start with the letters at the beginning of the alphabet or something like that. But we're really trying to make it small groups. There will be intake conferences, and that's the one-on-one time. So all families, advisors will reach out to every family and connect with them one-on-one to start the year in a virtual conference.
Great, that's great. The schedule, the letter day schedule will also be available in version 3 of our reopening plan.
The letter day schedule is on the middle school page in Veracross, so I don't know if they're putting that level of detail for divisions in the version for the protocol, because that's our letter day schedule anyway. That's our schedule.
Gotcha.
But it's on there. It's accessible. Anyone can go and take a look, download it, and have it on your fridge if that's where you want to put it.
Excellent. I think this might be our last question. How will tests be administered and equitable between on-campus and learn from home students?
We are digging into that. We're looking at assessments, so formative and summative assessments, and looking at a variety of ways to assess students. Luckily, we are a school that has never relied heavily on traditional tests, but there are some places where you find them. So we have a few different ways of going about that in a digital format, or we also have ways that students, again, because we have a shared experience, they have their Zoom open and they're possibly taking a test that they've printed out in the same space with students. So it's on our minds. We're thinking it through, and it might work a little bit differently per grade level and even per academic discipline.
Got it. Oh, we actually do have time for one more. So at what point will a family have to decide if they want to switch from learn from home to on campus or vice versa? How close to the 4-week mark will they have to decide?
That is a good question. I believe this Friday is the first deadline for families. The deadlines forthcoming for the following periods of time, I am not sure. I am not sure how much lead time we need. I know we're discussing it, and I know that the period of time is every 4 weeks. But what we're trying to balance is we would love to give families, the shortest time frame possible. At the same time, we need to be able to prepare for lunch. We need to be able to prepare for things on campus. We need to have some sense of what to expect on campus, and then make sure those learning from home, if there's a change or not a change even, that they have the materials and supplies they need for learning from home. So we need some lead time to make sure everyone's set up well. So it's just balancing those two things out. We're trying to get it as close to the deadline as possible, or close to the transition time as possible. It will likely be, I just got a little info. Little update there. See, things are changing by the minute. This is still so wild. The deadline will likely be mid-month each one. That's what I thought as well. But we're working to try and to give families as much flexibility. But there's a lot to do on our end too to make sure everything's set up well. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. This was very informative, even for me. So this was great. We are having a lower school meeting right after this one, so we're about at our end time mark. I do believe the recording will be available at some point through the middle school weekly emails or someplace on our website, so be on the lookout for that. Many of the questions that were not answered, and there weren't that many that we didn't get to, thankfully, will also be available someplace soon. Thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate your time and attention this evening.
Thank you.